Hello again, witches, seekers, and friends, and welcome to the Fat Feminist Witch podcast, the show where we do a little ranting, raving, and wand waving. I'm your host, Paige Vanderbeck, and together we're going to explore magic and spirituality, social justice, the psychic realm, and truly modern witchcraft. Hello again, my witchy friends, and thank you for joining me here on the Fat Feminist Witch podcast. I have the pleasure of welcoming yet another lovely guest onto the show today. Melissa St. Hilaire is here with me to talk about her new book, 30 Real Signs from the Afterlife, and to share a little bit about her life as a psychic medium and witch. Spirits are all around us all the time, and while some people have this very strong natural ability to see or hear or interact with the dead, everyone can open up the lines of communication in their own way. That's the main message of 30 Real Signs from the Afterlife, and that's why I liked it so much. It made spirit communication seem possible without lying to me and telling me it would be easy, because of course it's not. It takes commitment, just like any other spiritual practice, and the book gives you ways to open up to the spirit world and to recognize when someone who has passed on is trying to communicate with you. Even pets, even your dearly beloved animal friends can communicate with you long after they have passed on. They can watch over you, which I have to admit was probably my favorite part of the entire book. So today, Melissa is going to share with you a little bit about her own story and some of her experiences as a professional psychic medium. And she's going to give us all some tips on how to strengthen our intuition and open up the lines of spiritual communication. I'm very, very excited. This was such a great interview. So without further ado, let's get into it with Melissa St. Hilaire. Much for being on the show today, Melissa. I really, really appreciate it. I'm very excited to talk to you and about 30 Real Signs from the Afterlife. I loved the book. I thought it was really great and really approachable. Like it was easy to understand and to follow and to enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paige. I appreciate that.
It was really great. It's a great approachable book that it helps people who aren't very familiar with a kind of big subject really get into it in a way that's it's normal. It feels very normal. Um, but you've been doing this for a very long time. You've been a psychic and a medium for so long. Can you share with us just a little bit about, how that journey started for you?
Absolutely. So when I was really, really little, my grandfather died and this is in the book, when I was 3 years old, and I had this really weird experience where I walked into my grandma and I saw that she was crying in her bedroom.
Mhm.
And I asked her why very innocently, like, why are you crying? And she said, because grandpa is gone. And I was like, no, he's not. He's right over there, in like 3-year-old toddler speak, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that that sort of began my journey for me, even though I was such a young age. At that time, it didn't really occur to me that other people couldn't readily and easily see spirits all the time.
Yeah.
Now, as I got older, my grandma started to sort of take me under her wing, and she would point out fairies in the yard, and she would say
Mm.
things like, and like after it would rain and the mushrooms would pop up, she'd be like, "Oh, the fairies dance under the mushrooms and the rain, and they use them like little umbrellas." And then she would
So
tell me,
cute.
right? And then she would tell me things like there were other kinds of fairies that lived in the trees in the backyard where, like, if the wind blew, you could sometimes like hear little chimes.
Mm.
And she would say that that was the fairies and that they used to, this was my favorite. She would say, be careful what you leave outside, especially anything shiny, because the fairies like to steal it and hang it in the trees. And let me tell you, when I was little, I could see them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I would look in the moss and I would see the fairies dancing, and I would look in the trees and I'd see them hanging out up there. Now, as I got older and I had to go to school and like be socialized and stuff like that, a lot of this stuff kind of like voop, like it like went deep into my soul. You know what I mean? Like I kind of
Mhm.
repressed a lot of it. but I feel like it was a combination of my grandmother sort of telling me, like, don't tell a lot of people about this because not everyone understands.
Yeah.
And then also, just, I was a weird kid, and, like, whenever I would say anything, I would get I mean, not and I say this with a laugh now. At the time, it was kind of traumatic, but, like, I would get bullied, I would get teased, I would be told things like, "Oh, you would be so cool, Melissa, if you just, like, sat there and kept your mouth shut, but every time you say anything, it's weird and makes everyone uncomfortable." And I'd be like,
That's
"What?"
horrible. Oh my God, that's so awful.
It was awful, it was awful, and so I kind of for a long time I just suppressed all this stuff, and I didn't want to like deal with it aside from a couple close friends or like family members.
Hmm.
So that was my saving grace. When I was 12 years old, my mom bought me my first tarot deck, and
Hmm.
it was the Mythic Tarot, which is still my absolute favorite deck.
That was my first deck.
No way.
That was my very first deck. I remember I had wanted one for a while and I saw it in the store. I'm like, Greek mythology, like that's something I can understand already, right?
Exactly. Well, I was obsessed with Greek mythology. I used to stay up
Hmm.
late at night and in my bed and read these little like they used to be these little pocket books that you could get that like the Scholastic Book Fair, and I would stay up
Yeah.
late reading all these different mythologies. I was especially obsessed with Athena, but that's a whole other thing. But like so I would kind of suppress it publicly, but like privately I'd be doing tarot readings for like my closest friends. And then I had this one other friend, her name was Kristen, and she bought a book about witchcraft as well. And so we would like kind of, swap stories and books and education and stuff. And, I would go to Salem because I grew up in Massachusetts. And
Oh, perfect.
right, so I would go to Salem and I would like, check everything out there. And my mom would go to psychics in also in Provincetown, Mass. And I'd go with her and like watch her get readings, and I'd be so fascinated by it. I just thought it was the coolest. And anyway, so fast forward all through high school, I kind of kept it to myself. And then in college, I slowly started to sort of like come out of my shell because I started to meet other weirdos like myself. And I
Yeah.
say weirdos with love and affection. Um, and I started doing tarot readings again, like for sometimes for strangers, but mostly for friends. And they would be scarily accurate
Hmm.
to the point where I actually almost lost a friend one time because, like,
Oh
yeah,
no.
because I kind of had to tell him that his girlfriend was cheating on him. And he got so mad and he screamed at me and he told me I was making it up and that I was an awful person, all this stuff. And then I was like, okay, all right, I'm done doing tarot readings. I'm done doing anything like this. I'm putting this entirely away. And then, like, a year goes by, I run into him on the street, on Newbury Street in
Oh
Boston.
no.
Yeah, and he was like literally running towards me. I was standing outside the old Tower Records, and he's like running towards me down the street, and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? I just froze like a deer in headlights. And he comes up to me, he's like, Melissa, I'm so glad I ran into you. I had to tell you, I'm so sorry about everything that happened. You were absolutely right. Everything you said was true, and I just had to set this right. He's like, it's been plaguing
Oh.
my mind since then. I know. So then I had this kind of weird, like, oh my gosh, like, is this real?
Yeah.
Like, it does tarot. Now, at the time, I thought it was just the tarot cards. It didn't really occur to me that it was intuitive,
Yeah.
but I was like, oh my God, tarot cards like actually work, you know? And so then that started a sort of like a little side thing for myself where I just started like and this was the 90s, so you could find these weird little independently published grimoires and like
Oh, the good old
hand
days.
magic books. I know they were fantastic with like really weird ingredients that you'd have to go to a library to find out, like, what is elf's
What
ear?
even yeah, what even is that? Yeah.
you know? And then you go find some old book at the library and it'd be like, oh, it's lavender. Oh, well, that's easy to find. And I would do spells for friends and, they would work really, really well and all this stuff, but I kind of never like I didn't call myself like a psychic or medium. I like sort of like dove into the witchcraft pool way first. It felt a little
Yeah.
safer to me. And then some more years went by, moved to California and had some trouble in Los Angeles because it's just a hard city, let me tell
Yeah.
you. I wanted to be a screenwriter and I wrote tons of screenplays. Nothing ever really went anywhere. And so I started writing books, and then eventually I fell into this crowd of witches. And I went to the Green Man store to a ritual there, and it was
Cool.
so powerful and moving. I started bawling my eyes out. And the man who ran the ritual, Griffin, we talked afterwards, and he was like, "You're a seer." And I was like,
Uh,
"Shut up." And he's like,
that's just a thing that's in books and movies, right? Like that's not real.
"Totally." I'm like, "That's Whoopi Goldberg. That's not me."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, because Ghost was like my favorite movie, right?
Ghost is so good.
Good. And she played that character so like now that I do it
So
now,
believable.
like totally believable.
Yeah.
So he but his thing was like, look, if you're afraid of your abilities, that's totally normal. You know, what you should do first is build a foundation, study everything that you can about it, and then slowly start to do it yourself. So that's just what I did, and that's ultimately what ended up being the book. I just like you should see, I mean, usually when I do interviews, I have my bookshelf behind me, and today I just wanted to be on the futon. But but I have a massive library of so many mediumship books and witchcraft books and psychic books and auras and chakras and like everything that you can imagine, aromatherapy, you know. And one of them, one of the first ones I got, there was this quiz where it was like, "Are you a psychic?" And it had a bunch of things, and if you could say yes to all these different questions, like animals approach you and you understand them, and weird little things like that. I
Yeah.
said yes to every single question.
Oh no.
Like, oh, maybe he was right. Maybe I
Yeah.
need to do this, you know? And my friend Renee was like, she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be, working at this Midsummer Scream in Long Beach. It's like a horror convention."
That's fun.
And I love horror, just side note. And and she was like, "There's gonna be like this thing called the Grim Grinning Gala afterwards, and something like Leora's Lounge or something like that. I don't remember exact the name." And she was like, "We want to have a couple of psychics in there. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yes." But at the same time, I was like terrified because
Terrified.
even though I did all these readings for friends, I never like did it publicly for strangers, like mass strangers, you know?
Hmm.
And I said yes because the little voice inside my head said, "You have to do this. This is going to be like a life-changing moment for you." And I wrestled with it, and I had talked to a friend at the time who I'm no longer friends with, but I talked to a friend at the time because I was like really scared about it. And she was like, "Well, then don't do it." And I was like, "Well, that's not supportive." You know what I mean? And she's like, "Ah, I would just hate to sit and like listen to people's problems all day." And I was like, "Are you kidding? I live for that. I love listening to people talk about their problems. I love hearing
Yeah.
talk about romance issues or work issues or spiritual issues or dreams. Like I live for this. I love people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love like seeing how people tick, like what makes them go, you know? So I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. And then they were like, "All right, you need to give a modality." And I was like, "Oh no. Okay, now I'm stumped again." And I was like, "I don't really want to do tarot just because." I was like, everybody does tarot. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know, and someone else is going to do bone throwing. And I forget what another person was doing, but I was like, you know what? Why don't we just say I'm going to use my mind? You know,
Absolutely.
I'll just do intuitive readings, psychic readings, mediumship, like whatever you want to call it. That's what I'm going to do. And like I said to myself before I walked in there, like I was about to vomit, right? But I said to myself before I walked in there, I was like, "Okay, listen, you're either going to totally bomb this or you're going to nail it." And you
Yeah.
know what? It doesn't matter which happens because then you'll know, you
Yeah.
know? And if you suck at it, so be it, move on, do something else, right?
Right. Worst case scenario, it's one embarrassing evening. You can survive one embarrassing evening. But
Exactly.
it clearly didn't go bad.
It was so crazy. There were people lined up out the door. They had to shut down the line like an hour or so before closing because there were too many people in line. And I mean, I don't even know, like 200 people must have come through and gotten readings that night. And out of all of those people, only two of them were a little bit funky and off. But
Yeah.
those funky and off readings, like they started off funky, but then I just kind of like talked to the person and was able to like turn it into something positive. So even though two went kind of meh, it's like they all were okay
Yeah.
anyway. Do you know what I mean? And so then I
It
was like,
averaged out. It
yeah,
averaged out.
yeah, it was great. So I was like, okay. I was like 200 people, yay. You know, two people, not so yay. That's okay. And I got great like tips. I mean, it was just amazing. I even like turned a skeptic into a believer, which totally blew my
Ooh.
mind. Because he came in, he was this big, tall guy, and I could just tell by the way his energy was. Like he sat really tall, and he just stared at me like I don't believe you. You know what I mean? And I was like, I was like, what kind of reading do you want? He's like, I don't know. Why don't you figure it out? And I was like, okay, career.
Yeah. You seem like someone who's really good at being rational. Let's go with
Right,
that.
yes, totally. And I gave him this whole thing about how I felt like he was in between jobs, and I felt like, I saw 3 interviews and I described each interview, and his eyes got bigger and bigger and his mouth literally dropped open and he leaned forward and he was like, "Oh my God. I was not a believer when I sat down, and now I'm a believer because there's no way you could have known any of that specific stuff about me."
Yeah,
And
you
I
would
was
have to have a spy on the payroll, like
seriously, and at that point I wasn't getting paid, so there
No.
was no payroll. So, then I after that I kind of like I taught a couple classes because I was still kind of like nervous about doing like charging people for readings. I don't know, I had this hang up about it where I was like, if it's a gift, it's a, God given or universe given or however you want to define it,
Yeah.
gift, like I can't charge people for this. And then a friend of mine told me a very important thing, and she said, "Sweetheart, you're not charging for your gift. You're charging for your time."
Mhm.
It's made all the difference in the world to me. And so I started doing readings at the Green Man, and I had to like go through an interview process. They won't just hire anybody; they're very picky. And they totally vetted me, and they had me like do this interview process with the owner of the store, where I had to give her a mediumship reading. And it was so fun. Like I'm sitting there and I start giving her, I can't say what the reading was, but specifics. But as I'm like telling her what I'm getting, I'm watching her eyes get bigger and bigger. And she was like, "Okay, you're hired." And I was like, "Yeah."
That's
And
so validating, like, yes, absolutely.
so yeah, so that's that's sort of the story. And I hope I didn't go on for too long, but that's sort of
No, that's
like
okay.
my little journey. And then like this with the book, it was so strange because so about a little over a decade ago or so, I started writing books when I sort of gave up on screenwriting as a career. I
Mhm.
read a bunch of books, and I get some good feedback, but they were all independently published, self-published. So none, it's hard to self-publish because you have to do all the marketing and stuff yourself, and it's hard to get
Yeah.
into places like Barnes and Noble. So anyway, I did those books. They didn't really make as much of an impact as I had hoped that they would. So I kind of also put that to the side as well, and then I did other things. But I also at that time I did a spell where I said I just want to publish at least one traditionally published book. I would love to get respect from my peers about it, and I would love for it to do well. It doesn't have to be like a New York Times bestseller, but I would just like to
Yeah.
be able to reach people, and make connections. And I let that sit, and then totally out of the blue, like I've since then I've written other books, but I've been too kind of like shy to like send them around places, which is ridiculous. Like I have a
I
hundred
get
K,
it, though.
I have like 100K word sci-fi book just sitting on my shelf. Like, what am
Mhm.
I doing with this? But then totally out of the blue, this company, Callisto, contacts the Green Man store looking for me and basically saying like we would like to do a book on mediumship and we're looking for an expert. And so I was like, are you like, I didn't even chase it, I didn't pitch it,
Yeah.
nothing. It came and literally knocked on my door, which everyone told me would never happen.
Yeah. When Callisto emailed me the first time to write a book, I was like, Are you serious? Because like, I had been thinking about it and I'm like, "But I don't know how to write a book or write a proposal or, like, contact a public I don't know how to do that." And then I go into my email and there they are, and I'm like, "Oh."
I know, it's amazing. It's like, "Oh, okay, thank you, universe. I
Yeah.
appreciate." And also I had been trying to write a book on mediumship, but I kept like floundering. I kept being like, "Oh gosh, okay, what should be my approach? Should it just be like like a workbook? Should it be like a memoir and I tell my story? Should it be like a witchcraft book with mediumship? Like how do I do this?" And they were like, "Oh, we have the outline for you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay, this just made it a million times easier." I
Yeah.
have a
It's like a roadmap.
It's a roadmap, exactly. So I was like, all I had to do was just input all my expertise in the sections. I actually wrote twice as much as they even asked for, which was good because then the editors,
Yeah.
got it down to like the just the best bits.
Right, they
But
work their magic for sure.
oh, and man, they were good. So, so now here I am.
And it worked out great. The book is like, I was a little bit shocked when I saw how, like, small it was. I'm like, "Oh, books on mediumship and anything to do with, psychic work, they're just these big, hefty, like, tomes, right? Because there's so much." But this was, like, really approachable, and I was like, "This is something I can actually, like, read and get through." And, the little bits of your memoirs, your stories, I think were really helpful. They were like, "Oh, she's a real person."
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. I was nervous about putting that in there because I was like, should it just be like a straight, like academia type book? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But then as I was writing it, I realized like this is my story too.
Yeah.
So I was like, I kind of need to put this in along with the research. So I appreciate that.
And I think that's what people want. I know when I read books about spirituality, anything spiritual it's not objective, right? It's subjective. It's different for every person. So when I'm reading a book, I'm reading how that person sees it. So I really want to know how that person sees it and uses it and experiences it.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point too, because that's why there's the journal in the back of the book. Because throughout the book, I'm constantly sort of saying like look, okay, this is my research and my personal anecdotal like experiences with certain signs, but a sign is going to be different for different people. So use what I've share as a launch pad, but then journal and write your own interpretations because for example, like seeing a black cat cross your path. Well, I love cats like you have no idea. And
Mhm.
I love black cats. So obviously if I see a black cat, I'm like, "Oh, baby." You know what I mean? And
Me too. I get so excited. I'm like, yeah, black cat.
I know, to me it's a good sign. It feels like, if you're into Norse mythology, it's like, "Oh, Freya," or it's like it makes me feel like I that to me it's a sign of it's like a good omen, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's feels like protection from the universe. But someone who is afraid of cats is going to be like, "Oh no," and they're going to take it as a bad omen, and they're going to be like, "Oh no, 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 like I got to get away from here. I can't walk in this path,
Mhm.
whatever." So, it was important for me to put that into the book to be like, yes, this is throughout history what these could mean, and this is what I feel like they mean, but you need to find your own voice and you need to find what it means for you, you know?
And that's super important. That's something that I liked throughout the book is, you have this psychic gift. You're a medium, you have been for so long and you do it professionally, but the book is not written for someone who already has the gift and is a working professional. It's for regular people. And you say that you don't necessarily have to have these strong mediumship abilities to be able to communicate um with the spirit world. So how is it different for someone who, doesn't have that strong psychic ability? How is communicating with the spirit world different for them?
I would say it's different because there's so much doubt sort of filtering out a lot of the messages that they're receiving. And which
Mm,
is totally normal. Like I would never put down a person for that because I've gone through my own periods of doubt. You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah.
honestly, skepticism and doubt keeps you grounded in reality. And we are, we are spirits in physical bodies, so we need to be aware of reality and move and function in the world. And I also kind of feel like sometimes too, it's sort of on purpose to keep us sane so that we can exist in the world.
Yeah.
I was really lucky that I had a grandma who nurtured that side, and for as long as she could, I lost her at a certain point, but I had her for a good chunk of my early formative years, and she nurtured that, so I didn't feel scared by ghosts. I was more afraid of the living,
Yeah.
to be honest. And to me, like, my quote unquote imaginary friends were a support system for me. And but I feel like with people who maybe don't weren't raised with that, or don't tap into that on their own, there's signs all around them all of the time. It's just taking the moment to recognize them, to even or you even have to just know that you could receive a sign, because I feel like a lot of people just don't really realize that they can receive it. And I want to say that's more like maybe a Western culture, and maybe even specifically an American culture thing. Because when
Hmm.
you travel to other countries, like just recently I was in Czechia and Austria and Italy, and when you talk to people there about signs, they're like, "Oh yeah." You know what I mean? Like it's it's not even like a big deal. And there's a more of an openness to spirituality, and I'm sure it's different in all different places all over the world. But I feel like somewhere along the way, maybe with the Enlightenment, industrial age, people moving away from nature and moving into cities, it's like we've kind of gotten away from our purely, like, animalistic sides, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because I find that, animals definitely communicate telepathically to each other. They're super psychic. If you have a cat and you're crying, they will come to you and sit on your chest and purr,
Yeah.
because they feel it, they know. And even with trees and plants and insects, there's constantly in the world around us, everything is communicating on an energetic level. But us humans, we've closed ourselves off to this. We teach ourselves language at an early age, which obviously we need to survive in the world. But I feel like as soon as we learn language, we kind of, because think about a baby and think about a mom with a baby. They know what those cries mean.
Hmm.
How you can hear a cry and be like, "Oh, this diaper needs to be changed," or "She's hungry," or whatever it is. They know. That is with us for the rest of our lives. We just turn our mind off to it.
Yeah.
So when with people who don't consider themselves psychic or medium, I have to kind of say, like, I actually believe we all are, you know, but to varying degrees. You know what I mean? It's the same with artistic expression. Everybody can draw. It's just that some people are going to draw stick figures and some people are going to draw, like Picasso or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, all it really takes is training and time and patience, and you can start experiencing spirits. Just popped into my guide actually just talked to me just now and was like, "Don't forget to talk about fear." And I was like, "Oh, right, fear." So one thing that so I do mentorships as well. It's really private. I don't do it through an organization. It's just people that I meet in life who need a little extra help. I help them out because there are a lot of people that want to tap into these abilities.
Yeah.
And the biggest block that I see and experience is fear. And people will be like, "Well, I used to see ghosts when I was little, but it scared me, so I shut it
Yeah.
down." So to me,
That makes sense.
it's more about, like, let me help you open this back up, and don't be afraid ever, because as long as you're as long as you're mindful and your intentions are pure and you're aware and protect yourself, you're fine. It's just grandma
Yeah.
come and say hello.
And that's nothing to be afraid of. I think it's just, the unknown is one of those things. It's so easy to be afraid of what you don't understand that it feels like an automatic reaction. It's like, oh, I don't know everything about this, so I'm afraid.
Yes.
Yeah, and so you protect yourself from it, you shield yourself. That makes a lot of sense to me. I know I used to work in a like a witchy store, and a lot of people would come in, and something that always kind of freaked people out, but also that they found really intriguing was like crystal balls.
Yes.
And they'd be like, "Oh my god, crystal balls. Like I don't really want to like see ghosts." And I'm like, "You're here though." Like you there's clearly something that you're looking for, but there was
Yeah.
just this overwhelming reaction like, "Oh no, those are like scary." It's I
Right.
think it's the same way people react to Ouija boards or whatever. They're like, "Oh no, you can't do that." And I'm like, it's fine."
It's totally fine. Like one person was really upset about Ouija boards, and so I had to talk to this person and be like, "Look, it's just a tool, like
Mhm.
every other tool, to communicate with spirit. But honestly, you don't even need any tools.
Yeah.
Like babies lying in a crib will have ancestors come and look at them and check them out and make sure they're okay. It's you don't need anything to be able to do this. And honestly, it's of my opinion that it's just Hollywood that has created a lot of this fear. Now, are there sometimes negative spirits? Absolutely, because there's people who were grumpy and mean who died and became spirits, and there are entities that we don't even really know how to define that, exist out there. But at the end of the day, whether you have a Ouija board or a crystal ball or nothing, those entities are still there for good or for bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, to me, I love Ouija boards, and I always get like,
I think they're fun.
I always feel so controversial saying that. And I've had people get so mad at me and like stir up stuff. And my thing is like, look, it's it's fun to have something in front of you that you are interacting with that can spell out a message for you, especially if you are a little bit closed off in other ways, because it's
Yeah.
more tactile, it's in the physical world. Now, do Ouija boards always work? No, but just like any tool, they're not going to always work. Can they be influenced by other people who want to, be little tricksters? Yes, and I'm
Mm.
talking about living people who will purposely push it around just to like, be like, oh, you know what I mean? So, it's like I can see where it can be problematic in those terms, but like I said, just protect yourself and be pure of heart. And if something doesn't feel right in the moment, shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
you
know,
always have the power to say, "You know what? I don't think this is right for me, and I'm gonna just stop right here."
exactly. And I also told that to this one particular person, I was like, but look, if you personally have like an aversion to a Ouija board, then don't use it,
Yeah.
because that's you're sort of putting out to the universe, I'm expecting something negative to happen when I use this tool. So then you're
Yeah.
inviting the negative thing to happen. So,
Yeah.
I'm very cautious with it. Like I won't bring Ouija boards to like every class unless I ask people ahead of time, is anybody uncomfortable? If you are, please tell me. I won't bring it. But, honestly, I mean, I started using Ouija boards when I was like 13 years old.
Which is the age, that's the Ouija board age, right? Like, I still have one that's it was probably made in the late '80s, early '90s, and it's just like every time I pull it out, I'm like, "I love this thing." Like, this is so classic. It's just like a classic tarot deck to me. I'm like, "This is just such a fun tool that I can use for this."
Oh, totally. But you know what I use more now than anything else? Dowsing rods.
Cool. Very
I
cool. Now that's something you don't see all the time.
Right. I feel like it's becoming more popular. But I first saw them being used in a seance and I was like, what are those? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, that is really cool because I had been using, Ouija board and pendulums and miscellaneous other things. And the thing about pendulums, while I love them and they work really well, I had this friend who passed away, but her name was Natasha, and she was like a whiz with pendulum. She could talk to any spirit in the world with a pendulum. And she was
Cool.
a client and a student who then surpassed me, which is, I have to tell you, as a teacher, That's the goal. You
Awesome.
want
Yeah.
your students to get better than you. But but she could use it really well. But the problem that I found with with pendulums, they're hard to kind of see for a group of people. But
Hmm.
with use the dowsing rods, if you're sitting around a table doing a seance, everybody can see what it's doing.
Yeah.
And you can get your body really, really rigid, like especially if you like hug your elbows to your sides and or even put them on a table, you can get your body really, really rigid, and they're just amazing.
That's so
Oh, they work so freaking well. And I was like, gosh, I thought this was just for finding water, but
Which is the thing. That's the thing. Everybody knows about them, but yeah, those are one of those tools you read about it in books, and then you're like, I wish I could actually see that. Like no one uses these anymore, so that's really cool.
yeah, I love them. I love them so much. And I keep thinking I should do like TikToks with them, like live TikToks and have people ask me questions. And then I always chicken out because I get nervous about doing lives. But
It feels weird. It's you're simultaneously like live, so you're communicating, but there's like a recording of it, and it's like, oh, what if I screw up? It's never gonna disappear.
totally, yes, exactly.
But I actually think people would really like it because, like I said, it's one of those things you don't get to see people use them very much. They seem like almost like a novelty, right? But like to see them be like a real tool, I think people would like that.
Yeah, I do too. So I'm thinking about
That's
it.
neat. That's so cool. Like I said, I've never seen anyone like really use them. It's one of those things where I saw like, a video of someone demonstrating. I'm like, oh, neat. Yeah, I think that would be was something that I would be so excited to see. Oh, super fun. Um, so what are some, don't give everybody everything because I want them to get the book, but what are some things that people can do to open themselves up a little bit more to communicating with spirits, especially if they have those fears or those self-doubts blocking their transmissions?
Right. Well, I have to say meditation is like the first thing that I tell everybody, because if you can really quiet yourself and your mind and just sit and be still, it's amazing the information that you can get. A lot of people, a lot of, witchy influencers now use the term downloads,
Mhm.
and it's true. You can get a lot of downloads in meditation. Now, the trick, of course, is getting to that point. You
Yeah.
know, I have a very noisy mind. So, like, if I sit down to like meditate, I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, I gotta take the laundry out and I gotta put it away, and I gotta go to the store because I need to get my
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean? So, and I used to think that you had to have a completely empty mind in order to meditate. And then I learned from several different people that I studied because I was like, I need to really learn meditation. And everywhere that I studied, they were like, no, like you don't have to sit for 20 minutes and with not a single thought in your head and then feel like a failure because you can't do that.
Yeah.
You just have to sort of get through the mundane thoughts, let them sort of wash over you. Like, don't hold on to them. Like, yeah, I'll get to the laundry. Yeah, I'll get to the store. That's not important right now. And then what I find is then sort of sending a little question out. So I would start with spirit guides because we all have spirit guides. Um, a spirit guide is sort of assigned to us before we're even born, if not for like our entire many lifetimes.
Hmm.
They'll be what and we have others too. We have, some people can have a gazillion spirit guides, but we all have at least one main spirit guide that is with us. And I find that that guide helps me to talk to the dead way better. So like I can do it without using him, but if I'm sitting there like struggling and I call in my spirit guide, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and I'm just more tapped in. So I'll sit in meditation and send out like a little thought like, can you just show me that you're with me? In whatever way is easy and gentle for me to receive. So, for example, if I'm afraid to see a ghost, I don't want the spirit guide to have a full blown apparition in front of me. I'm going to freak out. You know what I mean? So, it's sort of like tell the spirits what you're comfortable with. So, I'll say, make the lights flicker, or, knock on the wall, or or, gently touch my face, even though that might be a little weird. But, like little, like sort of like give them ways that they can, options that they can communicate, and then sort of sit and wait and see what you get. And 9 times out of 10, my clients and my students, they get something when they finally do
Yeah.
that. They just had to slow down, and it doesn't have to even be for 10 minutes or even 5 minutes. It can literally be in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Just slow down for a minute. Is anybody here with me right now? Show me, let me experience you, let me feel you, let me get a message. And then once you get that message, then the next thing is to create some sort of spirit language with them.
Hmm.
So, like, for example, like if you're, and it's the same with using dowsing rods or a pendulum. What is yes? What is no? And
Yeah.
I just start with binary questions like that, because, trying to ask for, like, what should I do with my life? I mean, that's a, you know, like that one.
Why am I here? Like, oh God. I don't think someone can get that across while flickering the lights. That seems big. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just kind of start with something simple, like, and I'll oftentimes even ask questions that I already know the answer to. So I'll be like, am I a woman? And then see if I, and then, oh, okay, I've gotten a yes. So it's accurate. I've calibrated it.
Mhm.
And then once I get those yes and nos, I kind of, when I was first started to study this and research it, I kind of just stayed in yes and no for a long time, because I really wanted to make sure that it was accurate and I understood it and it was working. And then slowly you can start adding other modalities. Like I have spirit scribbling in the book, which is one of my favorite things to do. I do it literally every day, sometimes multiple times throughout the day. And I used to use paper, and now I just use my iPad with a pen, because
Nice.
I'm not wasting anything when I do that. And I started out that I would ask spirit questions, and they would either reply like with a Y or an N. And now I've gotten to a point where, like, spirit wrote some portions of the book, because I would get
Cool.
stuck and I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. Can you help me?" And the next thing I know, like, I'm
That is so cool.
and they're just ants, they're just pouring through me all this stuff. So it's like, okay, like, there's something to this. And sometimes they'll just draw pictures, and then you have to try to interpret the picture, which is like a whole
Yeah.
other thing.
But that's cool. That makes sense though, because everybody communicates differently. Everybody alive communicates differently. So, and I see no reason why that should change in the afterlife. Everybody still expresses themselves differently. That is so cool.
And especially animals,
Yeah.
because so I had my most beloved favorite cat that I've ever had my entire life recently
Mm.
passed away. I knew it was coming, but it still
It doesn't
hurts.
matter. It doesn't matter if you see it coming or not. It's painful.
So painful. And I begged him to wait until I got back from Europe, and he did. He waited just until right when I got back, because I was afraid he was going to go before I left or while I was gone, but he waited till I got back. And I was having one night where I couldn't sleep. I kept crying over and over again. And so I had the little voice in my head was like, it's time, you got to do some spirit. He wants to talk to you. So do some spirit scribbling. And sometimes when I'm scribbling, I close my eyes because I don't want to influence what's happening. And so
Mhm.
first I started to go, and I saw, like, it started to look like the outline of a cat. So I was like, oh, I'm going to close my eyes. And then when I opened my eyes again, and actually put this on Instagram, it's like you can see a cat head. You can see even where, so he was missing an eye. That was part of the reason why he was a rescue, and I took him in because he got into a horrible fight
Oh.
on the mean streets of LA, and he lost his eye, and I was like, okay, you're a pet now.
It's time for you to retire. Yeah.
And in this, if you look on the drawing, where his eye is, and it's the side that was gone, he even had me draw in the eye and then put an X through it.
Mm. Ooh,
And
that's
right, and then his back, look, someone posted as a reply and said it looks like he has wings, and I started bawling my eyes out,
spooky.
because I was like, he does, he has wings now. And so then I was like, okay, I think I can sleep now because I get this sense like he's with me and he's not going anywhere. He's going to stay with me. It's like he's become a little animal spirit guide for me, you know?
Mhm.
And weirdly, last night, because I was a little nervous about, I always get nervous before interviews because I
Me
don't know,
too.
it's just normal, you know? And so I couldn't sleep last night and I was a little nervous. And I get this sense of like suddenly something had joined me.
Yeah.
And so I immediately like started to look around and I asked my spirit guide, I was like, his name was Weasel. And I was like, is Weasel with me? And they were like, yeah, look down. And I looked down and I saw him.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I don't get apparitions that often. Like I see stuff in my mind's eye, but I
Yeah.
don't often see stuff outside of myself. And I saw it, it was just kind of like a blur, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like a translucent or semi-translucent blur.
Yeah.
And I just saw him like swirl around and then hop up on the bed and lie down next to me. And then I fell asleep.
Mm. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I I loved that you mentioned the spirits of like passed on animals and pets because that is something that's something I've experienced so many times. A few times I've lost a cat that I was really close with, and I swear I could feel them hopping up on the bed and like wherever they like to lay. I had one cat who would curl up right here, like against my neck, and I would feel that all the time. And I always noticed that whenever I found a new cat and we got close, that would stop. I would look down and there'd be a real cat there, right?
Yes.
And I always thought that was just, that's just me. I'm just sad or I'm just very sensitive. I miss my cat. But seeing that in the book, I was like, that really was like, there was really a ghost cat there. Like, that's not just in my head.
They are everywhere around us, especially for
Mhm.
animal lovers and people who have had animals their whole lives. And they come up in readings. Like I'll be doing mediumship readings for people and they want to talk to, you know, their husband or whom or father, you know, whoever has passed away.
Yeah.
And so many times I'll be like trying to get the human and all of a sudden be like, why am I seeing two golden retrievers? And they'll be like, oh my God, those were our dogs, you know, and so they show up all the time. And actually this one funny thing happened. So, so the Green Man will do seances usually around October for, you know,
Cool.
like a Halloween Samhain kind of a thing. And they don't, but they do a different type of seance than I do. I do more of the old fashioned, like I love spiritualism and the
Mhm.
Victorian era. So, in fact, as talking to you, my laptop is on my tipping table right now. I did that on purpose. I wanted
That's
the
so cool. Yeah.
so I do a vastly different kind of a thing than the store does, and they have their own coven and their own traditions. But so they don't use any tools or tables or anything, and they just sit in concentric circles and with the mediums in the middle, and then people who want to, you know, speak to their deceased loved ones around the outside. And so we're all sitting around, and this was like, I don't know if this is the first one I went there. I think this might have been the first one I ever went to there. And I wasn't like in the inner circle yet. I was on the outside. And I'm sitting there and Griffin, who leads them, all of a sudden he goes, starts sniffing. And he's like, okay, who brought all the cats? Because I'm smelling cat pee. And I'm like, oh, oops.
You
I'm
just
like,
got a little entourage of cats. Yeah.
oh, and I was like, oh no, I didn't realize because I've been rescuing cats since I was like my grandma. We lived on farmland, and she always had
Mm.
cats, and then my mom had cats, and so I've just all you know. And right now I'm taking care of 13 cats because there's a bunch of like neighborhood ones, you know. So you know,
Mhm.
and I can't obviously have them all in the house. That would be crazy. I am a crazy cat lady, but
If I had room for 13 cats, I'd move them all in, absolutely.
oh, 110%. I mean, that's like the goal in life,
Mhm.
right? Like to someday be able to have my own cat sanctuary.
Mhm.
But so like it's like, oh, of course it would make sense that I'm walking into a seance with a little army of ghost cats.
I love that. That's so great. I love the idea that there's just always cats nearby whenever you need cat energy. It's just there for you. That is so sweet. So, when an animal comes through in a reading, do they communicate differently than when like a human spirit comes through?
They do. They communicate vastly different. So it's often in pictures. Um,
Mm,
and the
cool.
colors are usually a little bit different. It,
That's interesting.
yeah, it's a little strange, and of course the point of view, the perspective is much lower. Um,
Mhm.
so I'll see I can't remember all the details of that reading, but I gave a reading to one person who lost an animal, and now I can't remember if it was a dog or a cat. I think maybe a dog. And I kept getting a vision of where they are now, like on the other side, like what their astral plane looks like. And it was a low perspective, and it was just grass and like butterflies and
Mm,
um, daisies, or not
so
daisies. What are they?
sweet.
I can't now. Daffodils, little
So sweet.
little things, and dandelions and things like that. And I was like, and I said to the person, I was like, oh my gosh. And they were like, oh, they were like, I wish I could see that. And I was like, wait, let me see if I can draw it. Cause I can draw somewhat well. I don't really do it as much as I used to, but so I lost the skill a little bit. But I was like, let me see if I can whip this up. And so I drew it and I sent it, and they were like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And they were crying,
Mm,
just making me realize I should probably do drawings in my readings more often. But
I think people would like that.
right? Because then you're like walking away with a little piece of the reading.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they show pictures. Now sometimes I do get words. Um, and what I've come to sort of realize is because they learned language in their lifetime.
Yeah.
Animals are so much smarter than most people give them credit for.
Yeah.
Like if I say the word treats, and thankfully I'm in a room with the doors shut and no animals with me, because they would become like, running in.
Yeah.
But I will get little words here and there. And then sometimes what I get is my spirit guide will interpret for them. So if it's a complicated message, they'll be like, okay, don't listen to the animal, listen to me, and I'll tell you what the animal is saying, kind of a thing.
Yeah. That's
So
helpful.
it's very helpful, but it is very, very different. And it's even, different like with living animal communication. Here's the weird thing, living animal communication and mediumship animal communication is almost identical.
Oh, that's so neat.
Yeah,
Ooh, and that's really cool because I would say that's not true of humans. Talking to a living human and talking to a dead human are probably super different.
super different.
Wow.
Yeah,
I That doesn't totally surprise me though. Animals are very this stuff out here doesn't matter that much. They're still an animal in here. So
exactly. And
that's
there's so
something that wouldn't necessarily change. Yeah.
exactly. And something else that's I have learned over time is that plants will talk to us, and they communicate in different than an animal, but closer to an animal than a person, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
that's cool.
For
Oh, that's really
example,
cool.
just recently, all my garden, all of the plants in my garden, not the ones in the ground, but the ones that were potted, started to yell at me. I would go sit outside, and I got back from Europe, and I go sit outside, and at first I didn't really notice it because I'll be honest, I got really sick I think I got something at the airport or something. So
Mhm.
I was sick for like 2 weeks when I first got back. It was awful. And so I wasn't really I was like, I had shut down my intuition during that time because I was like, I just need to sleep and drink water and heal.
Yeah, running on the basic let's only run the basic programs here. Yeah.
Exactly. Basic programming. I like that. That's exactly true. And so I didn't notice it at first, which I feel a little guilty about now. And then, of course, my cat was dying. So I was again like not paying attention to my yard. And then finally I went out and I was sat back there with a friend who she came over, and she's a dear friend, and she's a hypnotherapist, and she's saved me many times from my own dark self, my own shadow
Mm.
self. But we were sitting in the backyard, but around the fire pit, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, okay, my trees are screaming at me. What is the problem? And I started noticing that their leaves were getting brittle. And I was like, okay, well, it's really super hot in LA right now. Is it just the heat? So I like went up to and I put my hand on the tree and I was like, what do you need? And I just got water. And I was like, whoa. I was like, was that like the plant or was that my spirit guide? Like, what is happening? And I was kind of a both, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I also with the word water, I also got a feeling of like rushing, like as if I stuck my hand in a stream.
Yeah.
So then I had to like invest. I watered everything, but I have a drip system. I have sprinklers. Like, what is the problem? Did some investigation. Somehow we had like a brownout when I was out of town and it turned off the sprinkler system. So they none of my plants got watered for almost a month.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh, no wonder they were so upset.
it was so upset. So they're really super mad at me right now. But I fixed it.
Hopefully they'll get over that soon. Yeah.
Hoping. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, guys. Like I was not a good human for a little while. I'm sorry.
That's oh, that's funny because you sit in the garden and it's like, oh, this is so peaceful. But yeah, there'd be times when it's not so peaceful, and that would be it for sure.
'Cause they're so angry, and they also get angry when they get little infestations. Like
Yeah.
they tell me that happens before I even notice the bugs, you know.
Yeah.
I'm all about organic, so I use things that are safe for the environment, but and usually I just spray it down with water to like get them off. But here's the weird thing. I thought that that was just a me thing, like me and my plants, because I grew up on, I had um my great grandfather had an apple orchard. So it's sort of like in
Mhm.
my lineage to have this like green thumb thing.
Yeah.
And then I was doing a reading for someone, and I can't even remember who it was. And of course, I can't give all the details because it's private. But a tree came through in the reading.
Did they have, like, a favorite, like, a really close
Yeah,
relationship with a tree?
they did. And I was like, and we both just sat there for a minute, like, this is the weirdest thing ever.
You know what, though? There just like there are cat people, there are tree people, absolutely.
Totally. I'm one. I'm such a tree hugger.
I love them so much. I have so many favorite, like, trees in my city, they're just spread around, and I'll take a detour so I can walk by, this tree that I love.
Right? There's a tree somewhere in LA that has grown up through a stop sign and out the top.
Oh
And
my god.
like, I was like, you know what? I think I need to find this tree. Like, I
Yeah.
need to go talk to this tree.
Yeah, like, I respect this, like, that tree's got some drive, like, you're not gonna ignore this tree, this is where it's growing and you don't have a choice.
Exactly.
I love that so much. That is so cool. I never considered that non-humans could communicate either after death or through a spiritual plane. That is so cool.
Isn't it? I know. It still blows my
That's so
mind.
yeah, that's gonna be one of those things where I'm gonna be looking at like trees and stuff and being like, "Are you trying to tell me something?" Like, what
Here's the other thing too. And if you talk to them, I find them responsive to that. When I first moved into my house, there was like barely any, it's just a concrete slab. You know what I mean? Like typical valley house.
Yeah.
I went and I planted a bunch of stuff and I didn't really talk to it or nurture anything. Everything died. And
Mm,
I was like, oh no, what happened to my green thumb? Something is horribly wrong. Well, turned out I was planting New England plants in Southern California. And so
yeah.
the problem was my rational mind not doing the proper research. So I scrapped that, started over again, did the research, got local plants. And they were doing okay, but they weren't like growing super well. And I was like, you know what? And I kept hearing in the back of my head, remember the fairies when you were little? It's time to bring the fairies back. So I
Yeah.
flew to Massachusetts. I went to my great grandfather's land where he had the apple orchard. I picked up a piece of moss and dirt, brought it back, put it in my yard. Literally overnight, the next day, my backyard was filled with tons of little tiny white butterflies that I had never seen in
Mm,
my yard before.
oh my
And
god.
within a matter of months, everything just grew like crazy.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, and I just keep talking to them. Like, I'm like, oh, thank you, fairies. Thank you, tree spirit. And I go and I put my hand on them and I'm like, do you need anything? Are you okay? Like, and I thank them for being here. And I have an olive tree in my front yard that was supposed to not make olives.
And now it's blooming with olives.
It's got olives. It's,
Wow. That
it's
is
crazy.
so cool.
So
That is
weird.
so cool. And I definitely talk to like my potted plants and I like, I touch their leaves just to make sure that they feel right. Even if they look normal, sometimes you can touch them and be like, "Oh, something's not good here. I screwed up somewhere." And when I do that, those plants do a lot better. They like they're friends. They like personal attention, right?
They do. It's true. It's the weirdest
Yeah.
thing, but it also at the same time, it's the most natural thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think you were right when you said that in Western culture and especially in, America, and I'm in Canada and it's here too, but we have this idea that we are separate from nature. We are just a random thing that happened here. And that's crazy. That's a crazy thing to think. There's no way that's true. We are part of nature. People are like, oh, why do you care about the environment? It's like, because I live here. Like, I am the environment.
Exactly, and it's like how can you not, appreciate it? And I remember seeing something a long time ago about they had asked city kids like where milk comes from, and they were like a carton in the store, and it's like, and then they and their little minds were blown when they were told they came from cows and they were shown the
Yeah.
whole procedure. And like, I grew up where we would walk down the street and there was a person that had cows and we would get fresh milk from them. And it's like, wow, like like we have become so far removed. And like, I
Yeah.
really believe that everybody, especially people who live in cities, should spend at least some time in the country.
They should have
And
access to it for sure. Like, there should be someone who's like, "We're gonna make sure that you are not completely separated."
exactly, yeah, totally.
Oh, it's so true. Um, God, that's so magical. I'm just thinking of all these butterflies now. Like, that's so beautiful. I would be so excited if I walked outside and saw
I started crying. I was like, oh my
yeah.
God, it's fairies.
Fairies everywhere. Um, I love that so much. Another thing I loved about your book is that you're a psychic and you're also a witch, and it's a lot more common now for psychics and witches to be one and the same or to have them all in one room. But when I was growing up, that was not the case. Psychics were someone you saw on like Geraldo in the middle of the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
You saw them on Jenny Jones. They were a sideshow thing. They were not they were not serious.
Right.
Um, but I like that there's this connection between witchcraft and psychic stuff in here. How they seem like you have a symbiotic relationship between the two. How do they feed each other? How do they nurture each other?
Well, yeah. Well, they feed each other. Well, I think of my practice as spirit craft,
Yeah.
and I actually teach a class called Mediumship for Witches, and
Cool.
and I go into a lot of specifics about how they work with each other. But what I discovered was, so I used to keep them separate myself because that was like in the 90s, that was the thing,
That was
right?
the thing.
Like if you look at John Edwards or Sylvia Brown, who I just adored Sylvia. I know she's problematic in some ways, but
Those big fingernails.
just adored Sylvia and her grumpy attitude. Like I even loved that. You know what I
I
mean?
loved her on Montel. She was so bitchy. She had these crazy nails. She was always like scratching her temple and she looked
Yes,
so irritated. But I was like, oh, girl, I bet the world is so annoying for you.
totally. I just loved her. I watched her religiously. And like, but you look at these people and you're like, not witch. You know what I mean? Like these people are
Yeah.
not witches. But and in fact, a lot of mediums tend to be Christians, I've noticed. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but I have noticed that. But but what I know, and I used to keep them separate. Like it didn't occur to me that they intertwined until I started taking classes at the Green Man store to further enrich, my knowledge of witchcraft beyond just, sitting and reading books alone in my bedroom. And
Mhm.
and they talked a lot about how they use spirits in their practice and they have their own particular brand of practice. And so I learned everything I could from that. And then I started to try to incorporate it into my own little, I kind of do my own thing. I don't really do what they're doing because like some things I disagreed with them. I love their practice, but they don't believe in reincarnation and I do. So it was kind of like
Yeah.
that was the one thing that kind of separated me from their practice. But I was like, okay, well, what would happen if I was doing a spell and I invoked a spirit into it? And so I would ask spirits, particularly I have a friend named Amy Wallace who passed away many years ago now, but she was a dear beloved friend and she was also a psychic and studied and but she wouldn't I don't think she would have called herself a witch. But I called her in and I'm doing the thing and then the spell worked almost instantly. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I started doing it more and more. And every single time I did a spell with a spirit, it worked
Yeah.
for good or bad. I'm going to be honest, because sometimes we think we want something and we realize later, oops, I made a mistake. But it's
Yeah,
still,
there's a real be careful what you wish for kind of vibe with that.
but it's like, okay, all right, okay, I see how this goes. And then conversely, my interactions with spirits started to sort of awaken my own witch blood. I started
Yeah.
to I started to feel more connected to everything. You know what I mean? And I started to acknowledge and realize, wait a minute, everything has a spirit in it. So when I'm doing these spells and I'm, putting in my rosemary and my patchouli and whatever, well, there's a spirit in that rosemary plant, and there's a spirit in this patchouli. So it's not even just dealing with like the spirits of the dead. It's also dealing with the spirits of these individual plants. And then when you sort of cobble together, like, okay, well, I want a spell to do, like, let's say I'm going to do a money spell. Okay, so I'm going to use um, mint because you can mint money. I'm going to
Right.
use foil because it's five finger grass. So it's like going out and grabbing the money and bringing it towards me. And, I'm going to use a little bit of pyrite because it's fool's gold. So it's like every single thing has its own energy. And then when you blend them together in your spell crafting, you are sort of creating Frankenstein style, a brand new spirit cobbled together from all these other spirits.
Yeah.
And once I started to realize that, and then I thought, then the next thing that came to me was, oh, wait a minute. Well, do I then have to tell these spirits what their job is when I do these spells? So then instead of like it used to be that I just throw stuff in and I didn't really think about it and I just light it and see what happened.
Yeah,
But
this
now
is what the book says to use. Yeah.
so okay, it must be right. And sometimes they work and sometimes they wouldn't. But now I'm like, spirit of rosemary, I ask for protection and mental clarity. Throw it in. It works so much better. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Now, what I have been reading though a little bit online, and I don't know, you just never know when you're reading stuff if it's like a made up thing or a real thing.
Hmm.
But I've noticed a lot of people lately mention like, well, I never work with spirits and spellcrafting because I know people don't like that. And I'm like, why? Why
Yeah.
would someone not like that? If you're doing planetary magic and you think you're not working with spirits, let me tell you, you're still working with spirits because those planets are
Absolutely.
spirits.
Even back in the 90s, I'm like, what do you mean these are two different things? Like, what do you mean you're not a psychic and a witch? It's to me, it never made sense because I felt like if there was anyone that would be open to the spiritual world, to the paranormal, to whatever, it would be someone who already believes in magic and witchcraft. Like, that seemed like a real easy jump to me.
And to me, I never like I feel like when I came fully into my like witchy self, I had this incredible epiphany of like I'm a witch because I'm a psychic.
Yeah.
Like that's because I there were things that made sense to me in witchcraft, like things where it's like you learn about it and you learn that this certain thing has been done for hundreds of years before I was ever even born, but I've been doing this since I was a kid. So obviously there's a
Yeah.
connection there.
Where did I get that? Why did I start doing that? And that's why. It's because you were tapped into something already.
Exactly. Yeah. So I really do believe that they go hand in hand, and I do see more and more people bringing
Yeah.
them together, but I also see this weird resistance to it. So, and we'll see how it all plays out. But personally, as long as your intentions are pure and true, working with spirits in witchcraft is a wonderful undertaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think again it's just like working with real people, you have to be honest, you have to be authentic, you have to be, honest with yourself and with them for what you're trying to do. And I mean, they have the choice to help you or not. And you have the choice to take the help or not, but
And I always
I
ask them before I call them in. That's
yeah, might as well ask.
because I'll be like, say someone hires me to do a spell. I'll call in, I'll call in their guides and I'll be like, is it okay to do this spell for this person?
Yeah,
Now, if their guide said no, I'd have to refund the money. I'm not going to do it.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because there's a reason they said no.
Exactly. And but usually they say yes. And every once in a while I get a no, and then I'll be like, okay, let's how can we rework this? Because obviously something they're asking for is wrong, and then I might have to talk to the person again and be like, how do we
Yeah,
fix this? But usually they say yes. And so I tried, like, if I'm doing a spell for another person, I don't use my own guides and spirits. I use their spirits
yeah,
along with the spirits of the plants and things like that, because I feel like I want to work with their energy. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So like a clear distinction there. And something else that I want to say that my spirit guide is screaming at me right now is he's like, bring up the ghost hunting. So it used to be that because I always forget their names. I just have a mental block with it. But the two Rhode Island guys,
Yeah.
I used to watch those guys all the time. It was like the only ghost hunting show I ever watched. And but if you watch those old shows, everything is very I, I like tech oriented. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not very intuitive oriented, which is fine. That's okay.
That's
I'm not
their thing, yeah.
that's I have no judgment there, because it is what it is, and I understand the having to take sort of like a pragmatic, practical approach with experiments that you can replicate and so forth. Like science, I get it.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like it makes just perfect sense to blend mediumship with ghost hunting and even pulling in witchcraft.
Yeah.
Because then you've got all of the tools at your disposal to try to make contact and also try to get evidence. And I've noticed that when I go on ghost hunts, and usually not everybody uses me correctly. I've been on a few different ghost hunts where they just give me some tools and they're like, here, go use the tools. And I'm like, I'm a medium. I don't need any tools.
Yeah.
Uh, but there have been a couple of times when people have used me correctly in a ghost hunt. Particularly the Dark Zone did this, where they're like, we're just gonna let you go and we're gonna follow you and see what you pick up on. And then so I would get a something, and then they would use their tools to validate what I was picking up on. And man, I got to tell you, like that was such a great feeling, because to have an instant validation of like
We
I'm
believe you. Yeah.
yes. And like I'd be like, I sense something right here, and they'd bring in the tools and everything's like going off, and it's like, okay,
Cool.
so this is working.
That's so cool. I like that because, some people their brains are just they're so good at understanding technology. And I think there's this really weird misconception. It's like, oh, if you're a techie science person, spirituality is not for you. You'll never be able to see that. So being able to, if tech makes a lot of sense to you and you want to explore your spirituality with it, I think that makes sense. And then having someone who comes at it from a more spiritual place, you're bringing your strengths together.
Exactly. And then bringing in the witchcraft.
Yeah.
My dear friend Patty Negri and we're two of the forerunners of that, bringing the witchcraft to the ghost hunt, because sometimes you're gonna come across some unpleasantness in these
Yeah.
locations.
Yeah, a
And
problem that needs to be dealt with for sure.
exactly. And so like as a medium, I can sense the problem. As a tech person, we can record the problem and show the problem, but you need the Witchcraft Foundation to help with the problem. Though
Yeah.
that's the solution. So it's nice to sort of like bring in all of the elements together to do it. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it does. One of the only witch shows that I watched really regularly was Dead Files with
Mm.
Amy Allen, and it's because she was a psychic medium, and I'm like, this makes more sense to me. I understand psychics a little more than I do the technology, right? And then after a while, I noticed that that's what she was doing. She was like, I want you to contact or a witch or a Reiki practitioner or somebody who has these magical skills because they can help sort through the problem. I can just see what the problem is. And I was
Right.
like, that's such a great idea. Like you're giving these people a plan. And I
Oh,
like that.
yeah, I think every ghost hunting team should have at least one medium and one witch, if not both. Like you, sometimes you can get a medium like myself, we can get us together, and then sometimes you're not. But I really truly believe that, and I don't think that the word witch or witchcraft has to be a dirty word in those worlds. Like
Yeah.
I've dealt with some people who are like, well, we can focus on your mediumship, but we can't focus on your witchcraft because, that's negative and that's this, that, and it's like,
Yeah.
or don't fall for like the anti-witch propaganda. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're not all sitting here cursing and hexing people. Like, honestly, are there people who do that? Well, of course, but there's also people who
Absolutely.
weaponized Christianity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always going to be someone who uses these things to do negative things, but everything is duality. Everything is good and bad. So, and in witchcraft, there are so many of us who don't want to hurt anybody, and we all we
Yeah.
want to do is connect to nature and help other people sort of also connect to nature and kind of like wake
Absolutely.
up to their spiritual self. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I have always liked. After I started doing the show and it started to catch on, I started getting emails like, "You really helped me out." Like there was something, I was having a hard time connecting to my witchy self, and after hearing you and hearing that you also had a hard time and it's pretty normal, and here's some ways that I figured it out. They're like, I figured it out for myself too, and that always made me feel really good because, like, yeah, I want you to see the world in a magical way that makes sense for you. Like that's what I want.
Exactly. And I also find like witchcraft to be very pro-feminist too.
Yeah. Absolutely. That was one of the first things that drew me to it. It's like it's a nature-based religion, and women are kind of at the near the top of the pyramid in almost all ways. I'm like, that's what I want. That's like little child me was like, yep, that's it. That's what I need. That's what was missing from religion. It's those two things. Well, I think your book does a really good job of allowing, anybody who picks it up to make those connections for themselves, to explore it in their own way, to um we didn't even get to like some of the actual signs, but like to see signs in the world around them in a way that makes sense to them. So congratulations on the book, and I really hope that a lot more people check it out. I shared it on Instagram and a few people like, I'm getting it because this sounds great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really loved it, and I'm so glad that you could come on the show and talk to us a little bit about it. I think this is one of those topics that everybody's curious about, but they don't necessarily know who to ask. So this was really helpful.
Yay, thank you so much. Yeah, my whole thing is like I just want to be approachable and I like to simplify things.
Yeah.
I've read so many books, and my thing with all of those books was nothing was like just clear, like step one, step two, step, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to just streamline it and make it easy. And so it makes me feel so wonderful to hear that that's how you receive it, because that was the
Yeah.
intention. So yay.
Yeah, like mission accomplished. I'm one of those people who I'm like, oh, I'm a witch, but I don't really have any like psychic. I'm not really that psychic. And every now and then, something will be like, no, girl, that's not real.
Right.
But in reading the book, I was like, I don't think it really matters if I think I'm psychic or not. Some of these things have happened to me. Some of these things make a lot of sense to me. And I, I don't think it matters either way. All I need to know is that like I can pay attention and those are real. And that if I want to communicate, I have the tools to do that.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, this was so great. This was so fun. Those were all the questions that I had today. Is there anything else that you want to share about mediumship or about the book that you want other people to know?
Oh yeah. Okay. So, uh, I'm going to be, I forgot that I was going to do this. In October, I'm going to Mass Paracon, and I
Cool.
have a little vending table there. So I'm going to have some copies of the books with me and miscellaneous. I'm also a crafty witch, so I make things like little
Cool.
jewelry and whatnot. So I'm going to have a couple little things like that. So if anybody is in the New England area and they go to Mass Paracon, you can come and meet me and ask me anything. And and also, I'm on Instagram. I'm American Witch 13, and I haven't checked my DMs in a couple of weeks just because I've been going through it. But I'm gonna catch up. And honestly, anybody can write me anytime. I love answering questions and about both witchcraft and mediumship. And
Cool.
and if anybody wants readings, they can go to the Green Man Store's website, which is linked on my bio, and they can book me for a reading. And I will have classes coming up again soon. We haven't figured that out quite
Yeah.
yet. Um, but I also have a series out now called Secrets of the Craft. And so that's all about various different witch practices, because witchcraft isn't just like Wicca. There's so many different things to it.
Yeah.
And so I interviewed a bunch of different people to kind of like normalize witchcraft, you know what I mean? And I'm gonna hopefully be doing another season soon.
That'd be cool. I
Um,
think I think again that's one of those things where it's people are so curious like does everybody do this the exact same way but they don't really know how to ask everybody that question. So
and what's weird too is a lot of times there's a lot of crossover
yeah,
between various different practices. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Not just like between different witchcraft things, but between the psychic medium and the witch. There's so much that it's all in a big giant cauldron, and we're just mixing it all together.
Yeah, I think all the efforts to keep them separate, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, I think those failed. Like there's no way to completely pull them apart. And I'm so glad more people are realizing that.
Yeah, me too. But yes, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I guess my number one thing I would say to people is don't be afraid, and uh, talk to your spirits, talk to your loved ones who have passed on. They are there. They can hear you. They love hearing your voice. And if you ever have any problems and you need help, ask them. You
Yeah,
know, Lots of times you'll get your answers, whether it's from a sign or, something in a dream or just an opportunity coming your way. They're there and they just want to help.
very cool. I think that's great advice. I think fear is one of those things that a lot of us get a little wrapped up in, and it can keep us from experiencing the world in a really cool, really profound way. So I think that's really great advice. Thank you so much to Melissa St. Hilaire for coming on the show today to talk to us. I hope you all enjoyed it and feel empowered to open up the lines of communication with your loved ones, your ancestors, your spirit guides, your pets. I knew those were ghost cats. I knew it. Of course, there is a lot more in the book, 30 Real Signs from the Afterlife, and I will put links in the description where you can buy it, as well as everything you need to find out more about Melissa and her work as a psychic medium and witch. I'm so grateful you could all join me today on The Fat Feminist Witch, and I hope you will join me again. It might sound early to some, but August is basically pre-Halloween season now. And not just for me. This is real. I'm just going to run with it for as long as society allows me to. So I've got some really fun future episodes about spirits, the underworld, morning rituals, and my favorite topic this year, dark goddesses. And they're all coming up shortly. I mean, I like I said, it's pre-Halloween season. Let's get spooky. So I'm so excited to get a little bit spooky with everybody. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, a very magical full moon in Capricorn, and a super sunny and sparkly Leo season, which is right around the corner. If you'd like to learn more about the Fat Feminist Witch podcast or my other work like the Hedonic Tone podcast and my books like Green Witchcraft and Emotional Wisdom, you can find all of that at thefatfeministwitch.ca. You can also find podcast merch like stickers, tote bags, mugs, and t-shirts that go up to size 5X at my TeePublic shop, which is linked in the description. Without the generous support of all of my friends on Patreon, this show would not exist. I'm eternally grateful, and not only for their financial contributions, but also for the encouragement and the feedback and, all the laughs that they share with me all the time. So if you'd like to join up, head over to patreon.com/thefatfeministwitch and select whichever level of support works best for you. Every little bit helps. And like I said, I don't just mean financially. So thank you, everyone. Finally, you can always find me at my website, but I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, where I can get a little bit more personal with everybody, which I like very much. So just look for the Fat Feminist Witch or check out the links in the description, and I hope to see you around.